All right, let's start with the big story that we're tracking on Wion this morning, where the 7-week-long power struggle in Sri Lanka has finally come to an end. Now, the island nation's Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa has finally stepped down, bringing Ranil Wickremesinghe back into the game. Remember, President Maithripala Sirisena has called Wickremesinghe and has asked him to take over as the Prime Minister of the Sri Lankan nation again, just 52 days after he had sacked him, stating that he no longer enjoyed his confidence to rule the nation. Now, Wickremesinghe's party, the UNP, has confirmed that he will be sworn in as the Prime Minister. The swearing-in ceremony was to take place at 10 a.m. this morning, local Sri Lankan time, which is the same as the Indian Standard Time. But because there is this talk that Ranil Wickremesinghe will in fact be sworn in at a very auspicious time, that has got slightly delayed. And it also appears that the outgoing Prime Minister, Mahinda Rajapaksa, the man who in fact tendered in his resignation yesterday, has not completely given up his hopes of returning to power. Now, despite his resignation, a defiant Rajapaksa has said that he wants to return as the Prime Minister through a general election.
මහමිතිතුමන් නොමැතිව අගමැති ධූරයක් දැරීමට මගේ කිසිම බලාපොරොත්තුවක් නොමැති නිසා තීන්දුව ගැනීමේදී ජනාධිපතිවරයාට ආවේග නොවීම සඳහා මම අගමැති ධූරයෙන් අද ඉවත් වෙනවා. දැන් නැවතත් රටේ සුක්කාන මතට ගැනීමට මාන බලමින් ඉන්න මේ විනාශකාරී බලවේගයේ ඉදිරියේදී කරන හානිය හැකිතාක් දුරට අවබ කිරීම අලුත් ජනතාවාදී ආණ්ඩුවක් බිහි වෙනතුරු මේ සංක්‍රාන්ති කාලය තුල අපි ඉදිරියේ ඇති ප්‍රධානම අභියෝගයයි.
I earlier spoke with Namal Rajapaksa, the son of Mahinda Rajapaksa, and also who himself is a member of the parliament in Sri Lanka, about his father's resignation and the subsequent role that his party will now play in the opposition.
We will sit in the opposition and we will not give up our struggle for parliament election, because if you go through the judgment, even the 19th amendment of the constitution says that two-thirds majority can dissolve parliament. So JVP has already announced or given a statement that they are willing to go for a dissolution in parliament. So we will sit in the opposition as a strong opposition.
Okay.
Not only do the check and balance of the government, but we will also start negotiating with the UMP and rest of the parties in the parliament to go for two-thirds majority dissolution in the parliament. The decision of the impeachment is the UMP, because SLPP and SLSP did not support any sort of impeachment against President Sirisena for reasonable reasons, because now the parliament is unstable. The parliament no one has a clear majority. And in that kind of a political situation, we don't want to have an instability in the executive as well. And at the same time, as matter of policy, we both represent, at one time we both represent the same political party, and at the same time we both, even though we are in different political parties, we both have the same political ideology. So if UMP is trying to move forward a no confidence motion against the president as a political decision, we are not going to support any sort of political decisions that been taken by the UMP.
All right, so that is what Namal Rajapaksa had to say while speaking to me a little while earlier, stating that Mahinda Rajapaksa and his party will now be sitting in the opposition ranks and will play the role of a constructive opposition. But at the same time, Mahinda Rajapaksa has not given up on returning as the Prime Minister. Remember, the term of this assembly is until the year 2020. Maithripala Sirisena had in fact dissolved the assembly and it called for snap elections, but that order of the president has now been set aside as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court in Sri Lanka. They've said that the dissolution of the assembly was something which the president could not have done, and therefore the present assembly will last until its tenure ends in the year 2020. Now, it is interesting to in fact look out for as to what Mahinda Rajapaksa can actually do. Will he even be taking part in the swearing-in ceremony of Ranil Wickremesinghe? When I asked this question to Ranil Wickremesinghe yesterday, he said that his party has not taken a stand over the matter, but we expect that the swearing-in ceremony should take place any time now. And also at the same time, it needs to be pointed out that the bitter feud between Maithripala Sirisena, the man at the center of the controversy, who created this entire power tussle to begin with by sacking Ranil Wickremesinghe. What role will he play? There's also been speculation that Maithripala Sirisena could be impeached. There are impeachment proceedings which the UNP, the party of Ranil Wickremesinghe, have said that they would like to bring in against the president for his conduct over the last 2 months. UNP, it is being said, has the numbers with it. If they want, they can bring in the impeachment proceedings and should be able to carry it through. But it now remains to be seen as to how that tussle between Ranil Wickremesinghe and Maithripala Sirisena will play out. And Mahinda Rajapaksa, in his brief tenure as the Prime Minister, faced no confidence motion on 3 occasions and was soundly defeated in all 3 no confidence motions that were carried out against him.
Sri Lanka ප්‍රජාතාන්ත්‍රික සමාජවාදී ජනරාලයේ අග්‍රාමාරම් දස්සාව සහ නීතිය අනුකූලව අවංකව ඉස්කරන බවද ශ්‍රී ලංකා ජනරාලයේ.
So Ranil Wickremesinghe is to be sworn in as the Prime Minister today. He should have been sworn in by now. It was said that his swearing-in ceremony would take place at 10 a.m. local time in Sri Lanka, which is the same as the Indian Standard Time, but with certain formalities of ensuring that an auspicious time is in fact chosen for the swearing-in ceremony. That has now been delayed. So it was delayed for any time post 10:30 p.m. but that has also not taken place. It's now well past 11 a.m. this morning, and we expect that the swearing-in ceremony should take place any time in Sri Lanka. But this does not mean that the power struggle has come to an end, because this could just be yet another chapter in terms of how these 3 personalities, these 3 men who are the helm of power in Sri Lanka, could actually play their roles. Maithripala Sirisena, in the bitter feud that he's had with Ranil Wickremesinghe, it'll be very interesting to see as to whether the 2 men will be able to set aside their differences and work with each other. All right, now for more on this, we are joined in by Mr. Rajiva Vijayasena, who is a political analyst and also a former Minister of Higher Education, who's joining us from Colombo. Mr. Vijayasena, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this broadcast on Wion. Let me begin by asking you this. Now, for the last 52 days, we saw this very bitter feud that played out between the President Maithripala Sirisena and Ranil Wickremesinghe. And now, Ranil Wickremesinghe is the man who is returning as the Prime Minister. How is this being viewed in Sri Lanka?
Well, I think within Colombo there's some relief that the drama has worked out in this way. In the country at large, I think Ranil is as unpopular as ever. But I think it was probably a good thing that, there wasn't a dissolution as was planned, because I think this is a drama that needs to be played out to a finish, as Noel Coward might have said. And, both the presidential election of 2015 and the parliamentary election of August had a certain bizarre logic, and we now need to see its conclusion. You see, you have to remember that in our system, the president is the executive head.
Right.
But when another party has a clear parliamentary majority, it can run the executive. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem the UNP faces is that, it's fairly well known that it actually came to power, having been enormously unpopular, in a sense on Sirisena's coattails. And those coattails, I'm afraid, rapidly tore up. Mm-hmm. So that in February this year, when we had the local elections, both Sirisena's not independent, but his section of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and Wickremesinghe's UNP, between them were sort of trounced by Mahinda Rajapaksa's new party, the SLPP. Right. And I don't think that feeling in the country has changed very much. The other problem, though, Mr. Wickremesinghe has, because, of course, the present parliament has given him a plurality, but it's not a majority.
Right.
And therefore, he is, in a sense, dependent on Sirisena. He, got his confidence both largely because of the input of the Tamil National Alliance. Mm-hmm. But, it will be almost impossible for him to govern in coalition with them. They don't want to accept any ministries. They have, in a rather sordid fashion, been helping him from outside because the UNP speaker made them leader of the opposition even though they only had 16 seats, whereas the Rajapaksa grouping had 60.
Right.
So that was a bit of an anomaly.
We'll talk about the stability of this government in just a bit, but I would like your views on this speculation that is rife that Ranil Wickremesinghe and his party would like to bring in impeachment proceedings against Maithripala Sirisena. Is this something that is likely to happen? Do you think Ranil Wickremesinghe can do that?
Not at all, because I think Ranil Wickremesinghe depends very heavily on getting at least a few people from Sirisena's party to join him. And although now the majority of that party, a large majority, is opposed to the coalition, Ranil needs about, say, 10 people. And, talk is rife that he's trying to get about 10 of them over to become ministers at the moment. Whereas if he impeaches Sirisena or tries to, it's a long drawn-out process. And Sirisena's party can very readily expel those members. We have an expulsion provision. It was far too loose. It meant that, if the leader of the party didn't like your face, he could get rid of you. And that has been successfully challenged in the courts. But I think if members of the party want to impeach their leader, then I don't think there'd be any doubt that the courts would, find that their expulsion was valid. So I think Wickremesinghe, who is a very shrewd maneuverer, has to manage, and indeed as, people his own party feel his great battle is not Sirisena, who is frankly finished in a few months. The idea in most people's minds is he will now consider Kishan his deputy, Sajid Premadasa, who is much more popular in both the country and the party. And, Ranil wants to make sure that the party doesn't put him forward as its presidential candidate.
All right. That is an interesting perspective there, Mr. Rajiv Vijayasena. Do continue to stay on with this. Meanwhile, I'm told that we're also joined in by Mr. Iqbal Atas, who is a political editor with the Sunday Times. Mr. Atas, let me begin by asking you this. Now, on the face of it, it appears that the political turmoil in Sri Lanka has come to an end, with Ranil Wickremesinghe being today sworn in as the Prime Minister. He's to be sworn in as the Prime Minister. But how do you see this arrangement playing forward? Because Mahinda Rajapaksa has made it abundantly clear that he would like to return as the Prime Minister and he would like to do so after general elections.
Well, firstly, in my view, I wouldn't say that the political imbroglio has come to a complete stop. I would say rather that this is the beginning of a new chapter, because what has now reached a certain level is the result of two Supreme Court rulings where they have said that the dissolution of Parliament is illegal, and the other one where the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court refused to vacate the order issued by the Court of Appeal on the appointment of Mahinda Rajapaksa as Prime Minister. So the net result of this situation has left President Sirisena with no choice but to heed the constitutional requirement and swear in Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe as Prime Minister this morning. So all this time, in the last 52 days, he has been repeatedly saying that under no circumstances would you appoint him. So we are now seeing a shift in that position. So what is ahead of us is that by tomorrow or the latest by Tuesday, we will see a new cabinet being sworn in, and how the interactions between the two of them. One of the reasons why Mr. Wickremesinghe was removed was also because they were finding it difficult to interact with each other.
That is an important point that you've raised. Let me take that across to Mr. Rajiv Vijayasena. Mr. Vijayasena, this is not, something that anyone is in doubt. The fact of the matter is the President Maithripala Sirisena and Ranil Wickremesinghe do not get along with each other. When Sirisena had sacked Wickremesinghe, he said that, look, the Prime Minister does not enjoy my confidence and that is the reason why I am sacking him. So with this bitter acrimony that is played out between these two political heavyweights in Sri Lanka, will they now be able to patch up their differences and work together?
I don't think they can patch up their differences. I mean, they are psychologically very different. Part of the problem in the last 3 years is Maithripala Sirisena, who was elected president. didn't quite understand that he was the president and he gave in to Wickremesinghe far too much. But Wickremesinghe, who had maneuvered the constitutional amendments not to reduce the power of the executive, which everyone wanted done, but to increase his power at the expense of the president's, sometimes functioned as though he were president and used his position to enhance his own party.
Right.
Sirisena has, I think, now learnt his lesson. For a long time, he was more terrified of Rajapaksa than of Wickremesinghe.
Right.
And that's no longer the case. So I think he will do his best to exercise his powers in terms of the constitution now to make it clear that Wickremesinghe cannot have a free ride. It is a joint executive at the moment. And Wickremesinghe, who is not a fool by any means, will not want to take on everyone at the same time. And, his greatest enemies at the moment are those who would stand in the way of his total control of his party, in taking it to the next set of elections. One reason why I was, in a sense, against the dissolution was I felt that there would be a landslide for Rajapaksa's party. And I think one of the biggest problems this country has faced is governments that don't have a strong opposition. Now, with, I hope, Mahinda Rajapaksa made lead of the opposition, this government will have a strong opposition. That may actually make Wickremesinghe less lazy and realize he has to justify whatever policy decisions he makes instead of just, rolling them over the country as he did in the last 3 years.
Okay.
So we're in for an interesting time, but I don't think it will see a rapprochement between Wickremesinghe and Sirisena. I think that's psychologically impossible.
All right, you say it is psychologically impossible for the two men to, in fact, patch up their differences. And lastly, Mr. Iqbal Atas, we heard a very defiant Mahinda Rajapaksa yesterday when he tendered in his resignation. He said that he was not going to sit quiet, but rather would like to return after a general election. What realistically are his options now?
At the moment, there doesn't appear to be any indications of an election in the horizon. At least the United National Party keeps saying that they will go the full term with the new government they hope to form. But having said that, if the past is an indicator, we know that it has been rough sailing all throughout. So one has to see how best they can move ahead, and more so in the sense of their relations with the public. These changes came at a time when there were a lot of hardships on the people, the living costs, fuel prices and taxes all going up. So with 1 year ahead, unless the United National Party has a plan to win over the people, they are in for a disaster, whatever happens.
All right. That's not a very, very rosy future to look forward for, but we'll have to leave there. We're completely out of time on this particular issue. Thank you very much indeed for Mr. Iqbal Atas and also to Mr. Rajiv Vijayasena for having joined us from Colombo and got us this insight. So for the time being, it does appear that there is some level of stability that has been brought back in, but the political crisis is unlikely to end anytime soon because Ranil Wickremesinghe and Maithripala Sirisena will now be compelled to work together, and that of course remains a big if, whether they can set aside their differences and move forward together.